Hello. Hi there. Before I get on to carrying on with the Talk TV interview between Talk TV and Dowie Evans, I've been focusing on trying to get a timeline really firm, and because there's all sorts of different reporting, there's contradictions there, and I've always found it a bit difficult to get this timeline. But I think I've improved it a little bit for myself, in my own mind anyway, today. And if anyone knows any more specifically than I'm saying here, I'll look out for it in the comments. I wanted to start with this bit part of the timeline back to May 2016, that we read that Lucy Letby is moved from night to day shifts, because she used to do a lot of nights. And the reason for that is given is that there'll be more from the doctors. There'll be more oversight on her, more people to quote unquote watch what she's doing. That's what they say anyway. Sorry about coughing. So May 2016, don't have a specific date for that, but it's probably out there somewhere. Yeah, and that information has come out. That's from an ITV news video where Dr. Jayaram is being interviewed. I'm assuming the result, that decision has come from somewhere. I'm just backtracking a little bit now. The first time we hear that the doctors, and specifically Dr. Breary, gets in touch with the management and makes his feelings known to Karen Rees, is in October 2015, and they have this meeting, and that's where they both say different things about it. As you remember, Karen Rees said he's worried about Lucy Letby's clinical practice, and now recently Dr. Stephen Breary says, no, I was giving her an ultimatum and saying if you've got to take the responsibility then if Lucy stays on the ward, if any more babies are harmed. So that's that. And then the doctors allegedly, apparently, they try to write to management again or get in touch with them, make their concerns known in February of 2016. So we're into the next year. And they say it takes 3 months before management even get back to them. So that brings us to that May period where we're starting in the timeline. So that May period is this move, the result of that action or interaction between doctors and management is likely to be this move from night shifts to day shifts for Lucy. And obviously she's going to know what's going on. There's something she knows already, doesn't she, that something's going on there. She'll have been told before back in 2015, and she'll know it'll be all round. It'll be gossip, actually. It'll be around. Anyway, God. So where are we now? We're looking at the next part of it is Lucy is moved off the unit, out of the neonatal unit, into an admin role, and her last nursing shift apparently is on the 30th of June 2016. And on the 19th of July 2016, she actually begins the admin post. So there's a bit of a gap. It sounds like the length of a holiday, doesn't it? A 2-week annual leave. And then I asked the question here as I was building up this timeline, was Lucy Letby in the admin role all the way from the 19th of July 2016 up until her suspension in July 2018, i.e. after her arrest? Right, so I haven't had that totally confirmed, but I'm assuming that is what's happened, that she maintains that admin role all the way up to her suspension in July 2018. Although there's a period in time in which she's just about to come back to the unit, and we'll come on to that. I mean, a lot of you will know this information, but I'm doing this also for myself, really, to get the timeline clear, and for anybody who is a bit unsure about elements of the timeline. So then, obviously, Lucy's upset by this. She's not working as a nurse anymore. She's doing a patient experience in the admin side of things, a desk job. And she's not working with the babies at all. So she starts a grievance process. starts a grievance process on the 7th of September 2016. And the note I've made here is Lucy commences a formal grievance procedure against her employer and accusers around this time. Well, 7th of September is a specific date. And the Royal College of Nursing Union informs her by letter about allegations surrounding her involvement in a number of deaths. Now, one of my next queries was, exactly when do these mediation meetings, face-to-face mediation meetings, take place? As far as I can gather, Lucy was sent by email the apology letters, and then it was also required, or it was arranged, that there'd be face-to-face mediation meetings between the consultants, either together or individually. I'm not quite sure, it's not clear. We hear that Dr. Stephen Breary refuses to do the face-to-face meeting with her, but Dr. Jayaram clearly does one with her, because he does a number of TV interviews saying that he had it with her and he had to read the apology out to her and meet her on a face-to-face meeting. But it's all about the dates here. But before we come to those mediation meetings, we've got to go back to the 26th of January 2017. So Lucy Letby has been out of the ward and doing the admin job for the best part of 7 months, 7 months. And this meeting is between the doctors, not with Lucy there, between the doctors and the chief executive and a few other management people. The chief executive Chambers says to the doctors, you've got to draw a line under this now, and if there's any more of this, draw a line under it, there'll be consequences. And that's what Jayaram says he said anyway. So that's his testimony, what this guy said to him, the chief executive. Right, so it's a bit confusing, this, really. I'm trying to get down when was the mediation, actual face-to-face mediation. Again, it's not exact, and this is why I'm trying to make it more definite. We're told in certain reports that the mediation meetings are in March, but that doesn't make sense, as I'll explain in a minute, compared with another report. I'm comparing BBC and ITV reports here. There's a reason to want to understand the timeline really clearly, because of when Evans comes in and when the police come in and what's happened and what they might know. So that's the reason to do it, to have this strong structure there. I mean, let me have a look at this bit here. Yeah, this information is taken from the ITV interview with Dr. Jayaram. And what's happening here is, it says in the interview, and there's little flashes up of dates coming along as the interview is progressing, it's saying that there was a police meeting on the 27th of April. And elsewhere you can read it was a meeting between the police, Detective Hughes, the guy that ends up running the show, unfortunately, and Dr. Breary and Dr. Jayaram. No one else is mentioned, so that's the meeting, said to be on the 27th. Hitherto, I'd heard and read in other reports, media reports, that the 27th of April 2017, was the date not of a meeting between the police and the doctors, but the date when the chief executive wrote a letter to Chester Police inviting them to come. I mean, it could have been an email, I suppose. I mean, and did they arrive the same day? So there's a bit of confusion over this date. I really want to know when the police formally started their investigation, or at least the very first meeting they had. When did Hughes come to that hospital to speak to? What exact day? Was it the 27th of April? We're being told it is. When Detective Hughes comes to the hospital to speak to Jayaram and Breary. And here's the confusion with this idea of the face-to-face mediation, with the only one we really hear about, because Stephen Breary refuses to have one, is that mediation face-to-face between Lucy and Jayaram there, where he physically reads out the apology letter to her, and there's a bit of back and forth between them, according to Jayaram, in which he says that Lucy tells him, I'm coming back to work next week. Will you work with me? She asks him. This is Jayaram saying that. He says that that's what she said, that Lucy said to him, I'm coming back to work next week. Will you work with me? And he says, well, yeah, if you're on the roster, I'll work with you. And then Lucy says back to him again, this is all his words, all his account. Lucy says back to him, but will you be happy to work with me? And then he kind of repeats, well, yeah, if you're on the roster, I'll work with you. And he kind of avoids or sidesteps the idea that he's happy. And then he tells the interviewer, because I wasn't happy. But he says, well, I'll do it. I'm not happy, but I'll do it. But he doesn't say that to Lucy. He just says, well, yeah, if you're on the roster, I'll work with you. So this is the point I'm getting to here. There's a face-to-face meeting between Lucy Letby and Jayaram, a mediation meeting, in which she says, I'm coming back to work next week. And then in the ITV interview that Jayaram's having, it flashes up and says, they move on to the next bit where they said Lucy Letby was 6 days away from coming back to her job in the neonatal ward. But what stops it is the police being involved. And the police are involved, according to this same video and other reports, on the 27th of April. So that means, if that is the case, then Lucy Letby is saying, I'm coming back to work next week. She must be saying it within 1 or 2 days of the 27th of April, maybe the 25th or 24th. It's got to be very, very tight, isn't it? And then she never comes back. She never comes back to the neonatal unit. And presumably she stays in the admin role until she's arrested in July of 2018. So this is curious, because you get some reports saying that the face-to-face mediation was in March, but that doesn't make sense with these dates related to the police coming in on the 27th. It might seem like I'm over-focused on that, but I kind of want to know when that mediation, because they don't explicitly say it. When they're interviewing Jayaram, he doesn't say, oh, well, it was towards the end of April we had the face-to-face mediation where she asked me and told me I'm coming back to work next week, and are you happy to work with me? We never get that date. And it is important, I think. All of it's important. All the details are important for what might come up. So something's obviously got to happen within a day, 2 days, 3 days. If this ITV report's correct, something's got to happen to bring those police in very, very quickly off the back of that mediation, and it was all set to go. Jayaram's in this mediation. He's read this letter out to her, apology letter. She says, I'm coming back to work next week. It's all going to happen. What does next week mean? It's got to mean something of the order of the 3rd of May. It's got to be the 3rd of May. Because if the ITV interview is correct and it says when the police come in on the 27th of April, Lucy's just 6 days away, so they're making a thing of it. Oh, they just stopped her in time coming back. 6 days away from coming back. So her prospective date of coming back is the 3rd of May. So there's a few gaps along this line, aren't there? Right back from the meeting in January that the doctors have with Jayaram, Breary and co. I don't know, maybe Dr. B's there, maybe Gibbs is there, we don't know. Maybe somebody's written that up somewhere else, maybe we do know, but we just can't find it. So, that's that meeting with Chambers, the chief executive, who gives them a warning, effectively, and says, draw a line under this, stop bullying her. You might get reported to the GMC, you're acting unprofessionally, you're letting down the team, you're acting terribly towards this nurse, there's no evidence, leave her alone, you've got to work with her because she hasn't done anything wrong. And that's on the 26th of January. But it takes all the way, if the dates of the ITV report are correct, all the way to the May the 3rd that she is going to actually be on the ward again. So there's quite a bit of a gap there. Possibly it's while all these this mediation process is going on. So I hope this doesn't sound too laboured, but I just really want to get a definite timeline and for people to have that as well, So my question is, does Lucy ever return to the unit after the mediation meeting? It's no, because the police involvement trumps that, and presumably she stays in the admin role, although I haven't heard that explicitly confirmed, stays in the admin role until her arrest in 2018. The next question I asked was, when was Lucy actually suspended as a nurse? And I found out that, I'd read before, but it's about getting in a list, She was suspended on full pay from the moment she was arrested on the 3rd of July 2018. And it's understood that she was her contract of employment was terminated when she was actually charged in 2020. So she was suspended for all that time. There's two suspensions going on here, because there's also the Nursing and Midwifery Council, of which Lucy obviously was a member. So there's the hospital, the trust, suspending her. And then I read that the Nursing and Midwifery Council suspended her somewhat later after that arrest. But it took there's a bit of a difference in dates there, that it happened one suspension, then there was another one. Back to that meeting with the doctors and Chambers, the chief executive. Here's an actual quote from the ITV.com interview with Jayaram of the 18th of August 2023. And it says here, it's actually in the article part of it. So there's the article and then there's the video in the same, if you look it up for that date, ITV.com. And it says, Dr. Jayaram claims that the then chief executive, Tony Chambers, because he's obviously not chief executive anymore, told the consultants at the meeting in January 2017, quote, "I'm drawing a line under this. You will draw a line under this. And if you cross that line, there will be consequences for you." And that obviously got them really very upset. Just a couple of sort of sidelines to this timeline issue I've been talking about. And one is, I saw this article which I really recommend to everyone. It's called the RexvLucyLetby Facebook page. And there's many articles. They keep coming, and there's a lot of fantastic information on there. So if you're on Facebook, I don't know if you're not on Facebook whether you can access it. I'm not sure. But if you're on Facebook, go to the RexvLucyLetby Facebook page, and there's just constant articles all about whether it's the scientific side of things or the timeline aspect, or looking at the different people involved. All the different people involved. But I just quoted this, I wrote this quote down from an article there today, and it's, it's in reference to the RCPCH report, the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health, which reported in 2016, November. And it says there's a quote there but I couldn't actually find it on there, but I've asked them about this. But the quote, they say that they make reference by way of, we're not really giving her name here, but they make reference to Lucy in the following quote from this report. The neonatal lead, that's the lead consultant, Stephen Breary, in an effort to be thorough and explore all possibilities, had identified that one nurse had been rostered on shift for all the deaths, although the nurse had not always been assigned to care for that specific infant. So that's a quote that apparently isn't. It was wiped from the hospital website, but you can get a link for it. This RCCPH report, and I can't find it in that link, but apparently it's somewhere. I don't know where it is. But RexvLucyLetby Facebook, which is the same as Science on Trial, they're one and the same thing. It's the Facebook presence of Science on Trial, effectively. say that quote is from there. If it is in some report that was put out, no matter how confidential, in November 2016, it raises a question. Somehow, might Dr. Dewey Evans have had sight of that, i.e. know way in advance of being involved in the investigation that a nurse had been sort of pointed towards, and there was a group of consultants concerned about a specific nurse, which would contradict his later statements. If he had read that, if we can prove that, it would show him to be lying later on when he says, I had no idea whether anybody was suspected of anything or whether there was a crime. So he plays the innocent down the line. But goes back to this constant motif of, did he know much more before he inserted himself into this investigation in May 2017, and that report was out in November 2016. And the final sidebar sort of note is just something I read on a really good Substack called, I'm just going to call it up here, it's called Essays on the Edge. Essays on the Edge on Substack. And the writer of these essays is Callie Starforth. She just put a new one out today, I haven't read it yet, called Lies, Lies and Videotape. So it's substack.com and Essays on the Edge. But the actual, if you wanted to look it up, you'd look it up, HTTPS thing, Callie, Cally, Starforth, star as in star, forth as in FORTH, .substack.com. And the previous article to the Lies, Lies and Videotape was called Operation Hummingbird, in which she goes into a very deep dive, and there's some fantastic detail in there and some fantastic theories and ideas. But the point of me mentioning that very specifically was that in that article, the penultimate one, on Callie Starforth's Essays on the Edge, Operation Hummingbird is the title, is that she mentions that Dr. Jayaram has left working at the Countess of Chester Hospital. I was just interested in when and why. There's little bits of puzzle pieces coming in here, there and everywhere. Just interested in when and why. I wonder, and this is complete supposition and speculation, of course. Speculation is the better word. Was he finding it a bit difficult to work with nurses at the Countess of Chester Hospital because they're aware of what's happened to Lucy Letby and wondering how safe they are? I assume Dr. Stephen Breary is still there. Gibbs has retired. We don't know what's happened to the mysterious Dr. B, who's a female doctor, who's the fourth member of the Gang of Four. We don't know what's happened to her. She could still be there. We don't know her name, so we don't know. We don't know what we don't know there. But is Breary still there? I could look it up, but we know that Jayaram's moved on. I just wondered why. I wonder if he began to feel a bit uncomfortable there after what he was part of. Anyway, I'll leave it there, and because of the time, I didn't realise it would take that long. I've been jabbering on about, well, not jabbering. Well, maybe I've been going on a bit about that timeline, but I just really had to think we've got to get it clear. And there's a few little bits outstanding, and one of the bits is I'd like to know the date, the actual date that Jayaram met in a mediation session with Lucy Letby, in which she said to him, I'm coming back to work next week. Will you be happy to work with me? And then that's a knife's cut through that potential because the police are involved. And it's so very, very tight together, though. They must be tight together, otherwise... Anyway, we're just trying to hammer down that date. And I guess we're assuming the 27th of April is the effective date of that first meeting between Detective Hughes and Breary and Jayaram at the hospital, in which There's a quote from Jairam. He says very arrogantly, he said, it only took 10 minutes of listening to me or listening to us, and he knew that he'd have to investigate. It's a bit of a, goes to form, as it were, goes to character, revelatory of character, that. You found someone that would start acting on what was going on in their heads and make it a real thing. And they did. Anyway, it's getting dark, isn't it? And it's very dark. It's very dark, this case. Everything about it is dark. Everything about it. Except for Lucy. And Lucy, the name, means light. Thank you.